Hello and welcome back to the course. In this part, I want to talk about the formation where the ships, the enemy ships, are going to go into. Let me first explain what we are going to do. So what we need some kind of grid inside our formation where all these small ships and later on also the medium and the big ships are going to go into. Currently, or whenever you're starting to form a grid, you basically loop through the possible amount of this grid and then give it a kind of offset between those two fields. That's what we're going to start first with. But the second one is going to be we don't want to fill them from the left and then go over through the complete playfield. We want to do it a bit different. I'm going to give you a small screenshot of what we are trying to achieve. When our ship is going to be at the position where the pass has ended, I want the first ship to go here to number 0. So from the center point of the actual formation, he's going to the left. The next one I want to do is I want to give him to the right. So the second one is going to fill this spot. The third one is going to go here, so the fourth one here, and so on. So it will always be left, right, then top left, top right, then again left, right, left top, right, left top, right top. And I want to have this like until we are reaching the complete 20 fields. So I want to fill this always from the center to the left, then to the right, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be a bit troublesome since some of these functions are probably new for you and a good amount of pretty much heavy mathematic calculations. I will go through everything and try to explain it as best as I can. So that's what I want to do. Left, right, up, right, and so on and so forth. So it's always going to fill from the center. And that's what we're going to start first with. So what we need to do is we need to calculate these points from that particular start here. So I open up my Unity and we're going to create a new script and I call this script formation. So C# script formation. And of course, we're going to open this one up in MonoDevelop or Visual Studio, whatever you like more. So what we need to do is whenever this is going to become open, we need at first to create the grid itself. So we need to define a grid size. We can do this with normal integers or an integer array, basically doesn't really matter for me. So I separate them so you can hopefully see and understand that stuff better. So what we're going to have is a grid size X. So this is the size from the left to the right. In this case, I want to give it a 10 since we have 10 pieces per row. Speaking of a row, we're gonna say public int grid size y in this particular case, and this is going to be 2 since we have 2 rows from bottom to top. And of course close the line with a semicolon. Later on we're gonna not make use the y-axis in this particular case, but the z-axis. So yeah, actually it doesn't really matter how we name stuff here as long as we later on know what we're going to do. Then we have the offsets between the x values from one piece to another, and we have the y offset from the lower row to the upper row. So that's what we want to separate as well, since there are 2 different values coming in place. So this is going to be grid offset x is going to be, we start with equal to 1. Later on we're gonna change them in the inspector and probably fit them numbers here and there. Then we have the grid offset y is going to start at 1 as well. So once again we fiddle around with these. And the last what we need is we need to put all this information into a list. So we say public list, and in this case this list is of type vector3, so we can actually take all the position data as it is and put this into this grid list. So we call this grid list, and of course we set this one already to be a new list of type vector3, open close parentheses and close the line with a semicolon. So we initialize the list over here once again, as we already did in the other videos. And what we want to do is at the moment we just don't need start and update, so you can get rid of them. What we need to do is we need to at first create the function we already used a lot now. It's the onDrawGizmos function, because we want to do this already in runtime or in inspector time whenever we are able to do so. What we now want to do is, as we always do, is we want to clear the grid list. So we say grid list dot clear, because we are going to iterate through that the whole time, and we don't want to have it filling up constantly until it is like, yeah, just too big. What we now want is, or what I want to do is now I want to increment a number which is counting for us the number of slots we're going to have, or actually the position data. This is important. We start at 0 because we are iterating through all of them and increment or increase num every time we are looping through all of that. Okay, so for the x value, we need now a for loop as well as for the y value. So for the grid size x, we create a for loop at first. So we say for, double tap, and then we're gonna tap again. So we can say, meanwhile, I is smaller than grid size x. Then we're gonna do an increment I. What we now want to do is we want to also bring here another for loop, which is going to be for the grid size y. So meaning at first we change the letter here to j, and j, and max is going to be grid size y. So I'm gonna enter and enter again, so everything is cleaned up. Okay, so at first, if you would go and fill up a user array, you would go just from x and then through the y value. We're gonna do that. We build it up a bit, so you actually understand what's going on. So what we say is we create a float. We take it or take this number x, and x is usually the grid offset x times the letter I. So this would usually be the one for having an offset incrementing from the left to the right until the array is full. We're gonna debug that, and so you're gonna understand what we are doing different here. So, and for y is going to be the same. So we say grid offset y, in this case, times j. So j would be the one would just give us the next line actually. And then we position these things somewhere. We can bring a vector which is going to show us where these things are going to land. And I want to show them also with these numbers, as I already explained in the introduction of this video. So we create a new vector3. We call it vec or vector, whatever you like. It's a new vector3, and in open close parentheses we put in this dot transform. We don't need the special word this, but actually it makes it more understandable hopefully for you. So dot position dot x plus x. So we take the current position of the game object where this formation is going to be at, and then we're gonna increment whatever the current position is plus the value we have actually calculated here. We're gonna do the same for the z-axis, and the y-axis is going to be null. So once again, if you are now confused why we are using y here but not there, is actually we are basically using the z value, but it's easier to hopefully to understand. We can also rename things later on as you please. So this is the transform dot z plus y. So if we are not taking y, dot position dot z plus y. If you don't like to have the y over here, or actually in this case you want this to be z, of course feel free to rename it to z, so it's probably more later on more understandable for you. You can even rename this one. So when you have a value at least 2 times in your scene or wherever, you want to use refactor by right click, refactor, rename, if you want this one to be the grid of the z. So it is actually also renamed over here. And so you're gonna simplify your work with doing so. Don't forget the enter line with the semicolon. So we now store the new vector based on the created parts here. Now let's visualize the grid or the positions. We're gonna make use of handles. Handles is based on or located in Unity Editor. So when you're pressing or writing here handles, it will be red. So you need to right click, resolve using Unity Editor. So we're gonna label things now. So we say handles.label, and now where do we want to label something? We want to do this at the position vec, which we are currently looking or going through, and then we give it a text, and the text is going to be a number. In this case, it's going to be the number we have created in the very beginning over here. Once again, per iteration we delete this number, but it will be completely increased over here. And what we now do is after the handles we say num++, so we increase the number over here. We don't add anything to the grid list over here since we only want to see first what's going on. So don't forget to save and go back to Unity and create an empty game object. Oh, and we need to convert num into a string. So we say num.toString and open close parentheses. We don't need to do anything else, but since this is an integer, it cannot be used as a usual string, so keep that in mind. We can actually also use these as a float, or we should use them as floats here. So the grid offset x and z are going to be floats. Just keep that in mind, because otherwise this calculation later on when we have like comma numbers are going to be or not going to be working correctly. So that's where this error has come from. Once the error is done or gone, we're going to create our empty game object. We name it maybe already fly formation, and we drag the formation script onto it. What you can see instantly is that there are numbers created from 0 from the very left to then it's going up, right down, up, right down, and so on and so forth. So per iteration, per y iteration, it's going to fill the x constantly. And it is going, let me go to isometric view, and it is starting at the position wherever this object is currently located at. The number is slightly offset to the lower right, so you can see, okay, this is going to be the one where it is supposed to be. As you can see, we have now these numbers next to the grid because of the x size and z size. But basically, that's not what we want to achieve. As I already explained, we want to fill this array not from the left to the right and not from down to top. We want to fill them from the center of the fly formation game object and then go left, right, up, left, right, up, left, up, right, and so on and so forth. But that is going to be part of the next video.